Ben Freeman Catley. If you are being influenced by others, you are conforming to your own condemnation. Renowned philosopher Jose Marti states, "The first duty of man is to think for himself." The moment we let someone do the thinking for us, we have lost our free expression and what it is that makes us human beings. There is a difference between influence and taking advantage of. For example, the media influences us what to think about, whereas renowned brands such as Nike utilize and take advantage of underpaid workers for higher profits. However, a conniving roach will look at these two terms and discover the blurred lines in between them and utilize them in a tool of manipulation and forcing to their own agenda. Just as Iago did to Othello in the Shakespearean play Othello, he touched on his insecurities and naivety to influences decision-making, taking advantage of Othello's trust. This is not the only case of influence, as I will put under the microscope in my seminar. See, there's media and Nike. Many relationships have run a similar course in the sporting arena, political, and even with our friends, etc. It is hard to fathom the demise of George W. Bush without the influences that he had on his career. His dastardly reputation without such influences Donald Rumsfeld and Dick Cheney is hard to fathom. We as humans tend to seek advice from those older than us, as they have had more experience in life than us. However, I believe that this can be detrimental to our self-expression and forward thinking. For example, Steve Jobs would never have asked his father for advice on ideas to improve the iPhone, etc. Those older, if I was to ask an older gentleman what course to take in the 1970s, I would receive an educated answer based on previous knowledge. However, today's answers are just not in the older generation's hands. It is up to us to influence our own way of life and experience life how we should. This is why I believe it was wrong to listen and react upon advice given to George W. Bush by his advisors. Because when it came to the invasion of Iraq, George W. Bush had support of those who had previously worked with his father on the previous issue, down in his presidency. This, I believe, gives a psychological urge to George W. Bush to do in which his father had done. James K. Baxter states in his poem, The Homecoming, that the old photographs were more real than he. In my opinion, this refers back to George W. Bush's relationship with his father in the presidency, where he may not have actually went into politics in the first place if it wasn't for his father's influence. I believe that if George Bush had followed his own ideologies instead of his past fathers and advisors, we would have a more... the Iraq issue would not be as such today. After recently reading Mike Tyson's book, I learned how one can be left at rock bottom by those who are meant to help. Having a manager can be a confusing experience. You pay a man to reap the rewards of your own success and fill the paperwork that you don't want to. This not only had a negative effect on Tyson's career, but his life in general. James K. Baxter notes in his Cold Pub poem that we as humans are stuck in a padlocked box of winter, time, and craving. But when our desires and cravings are given to us with no consequence, I believe we cannot operate as normal human beings, as is shown in Tyson's downfall. Tyson notes in his book that when he made the deal with Don King, I made a deal with the devil. Don King had previously managed such prestigious boxing legends as Muhammad Ali, Joe Frazier, George Foreman, Larry Holmes, Evander Holyfield, Roy Jones Jr., etc. Nearly all of these athletes have sued Mr. King for defrauding them in their sporting arena. King yet still found a way to weasel his way out of these fines and legal troubles, signing off on 6 to 8 figure deals with his athletes, to them which would be nothing. Don King gave Mike Tyson his every desire, no matter what, no matter how ridiculous and no matter how he was exploited in the process. Tyson states that he would fire King, and the next day would be shown $100,000 in cash as a sort of, please let me back. Don King also let Tyson indulge in his dangerous drug habit rather than letting him overcome it and surpass it. Tyson states in his book that during his tenure with King, Tyson would carry sales weights worth of cocaine. This can give you life imprisonment. With the proper influence, Tyson may not have been left in this situation where he could have been facing serious jail time. Using one's weakness as a manipulative tool is shown in Othello, where Iago uses Othello's inexperience with Venetian women against him, where he labels all the women of Venice as whores and sluts, for example. This really was to his own agenda, where he was trying to surpass Cassio in a role of lieutenant. In today's advertising, companies have acknowledged that kids are heavily influenced by their peers, to what they find fashionable, to what they like to listen to, etc. This again projects how influenced we are in today's society, not just by our actions, but how we present ourselves and act. Peer pressure is a toxin usually utilised by those of a younger age. But however, in New Zealand, this is an activity practiced throughout all ages, which I lay down to our nearly appalling drinking culture. 1 in 5 New Zealanders above 15 have a considered hazardous drinking habit, and 600 to 800 people per year are killed in alcohol-related incidents. I can confidently comment on this drinking culture, as I for one have experienced it. During year 10, it became cool to drink and get drunk. By year 11, it was expected that every weekend you'd be able to polish a dozen beers, no sweat. This has raised me now in a slightly awkward position where I see alcohol as an activity associated with normal weekends. In reality, alcohol is not something that is a consistent need, such as water, food, and shelter. It is a desire us as New Zealanders have become far more related to and a part of, which I believe leads again to our heavy influence by our friends and how we can be influenced to do silly things when we are on the piss. This refers back to conforming to what our friends do through influence and the desire to fit in. It was Othello's desire to fit into Venetian society and make a difference for the positive. However, he wasn't aware, or he was aware the whole time, that he didn't fully belong. This led to his demise, as he was trying to be something that he wasn't. In conclusion, letting yourselves be influenced by others can be detrimental, and even helpful in regard to other people's agenda. Conforming to the regular norm takes away from what makes yourself unique and a true individual. Thank you very much for listening to my seminar today. How long was that?